Hi, welcome to my channel. I'm Kass, or the Modern Bookwoman, and this is my first long-form video. And I just wanted to start out by doing the newbie tag and introducing myself and getting to know y'all better and letting you get to know me better. So I've been on YouTube for so many years consuming content, and most recently I've been consuming all the booktube content for a few years now. I really dove back into reading just before the pandemic, and I've been a very avid reader ever since. And I just wanted to be part of the conversation and make some more bookish friends because I just love book people. So I thought I would start out with the newbie tag and get to know you guys a little bit, and maybe you guys can get to know me as well. The first question is, why did I start the channel? Okay, well, so I already answered that. So in addition to wanting to be part of the conversation and wanting to make friends, I feel like there's an underrepresentation of my demographic. I am in my early 40s. I am a single mom of 5 children. I work full-time, and there's so many amazing booktubers out there, but I just feel like there's not a ton of booktubers that fall into my category. I don't see a lot of working moms, single moms, or women in their 40s. I'm looking for those people. Not that I can't be friends with other people, because I totally follow all the young booktubers, and there's some amazing ones out there. But I just wanted to kind of represent my population and make friends with people that fall into my category, because life and experiences gives you a little bit of different insight into the books you're reading. You know, it affects your experience of a book, and so it's a different perspective, and I feel like that's something fresh that I can offer to the community. Okay, so the next question is, what is unique about your channel? And I think I answered this a little bit, that my demographic is kind of underrepresented out there on BookTube. But the other thing that is unique about me is that I work full time and I'm neurodivergent. So I have ADHD and I am on the spectrum. And because of that, my brain works differently, and I listen to a lot of audiobooks. I'm able to listen to audiobooks while I work, while I clean, while I'm cooking dinner, while I'm doing all the other things that life demands of me. It stimulates that part of my brain that my ADHD needs, constant stimulation. And so it's that like secondary fidget almost. Like listening to books for me is probably similar to people who like to fidget with things. I don't fidget so much, but I'm listening to something while doing something else, and that's taking care of that physical probably aspect of fidgeting. My brain is working and my hands are moving for work because I'm on the computer. Some of my favorite books. Okay, gosh, you guys, I don't have just like one favorite book. I am compiling a list of like my top books, but even then it's kind of hard because I probably have like a top 10 that I just like love equally, but they're different genres and I love them for different reasons, you know? But let's start with my genres. So first of all, I'm in my fantasy era right now. So I read a lot of fantasy, and I do like fantasy romance, but I like there to be like a strong fantasy element. There has to be a plot. I'm not in it for just the romance. I appreciate a really good romance, but there has to be a plot. I've been in my fantasy era for about a year now, and I've just been like devouring all the fantasy books. I don't see that coming to an end anytime in the very near future, but prior to that, I was deeply into historical fiction and World War II fiction. So I've read a ton of historical fiction, and I still love historical fiction, and I will sprinkle that in between my fantasy reads. I really enjoy memoirs a lot, so I would say probably, and literary fiction, but I would probably say my top 3 are memoirs, historical fiction, and fantasy. But I also really enjoy a good literary fiction. And again, I'm still sprinkling those in between my fantasies. It's nice to switch things up. So I don't get into reading slumps very frequently, and I think that is the key. It's saying I never get into a reading slump, but it's very rare and it usually doesn't last very long. Some of my favorite authors are Khaled Hosseini. These are my auto-buy authors. Khaled Hosseini. I love Frederick Backman. Everything he writes freaking love it. He is incredible. I love Sarah J. Maas. I have read all of her books, and I just finished my reread of Throne of Glass for the second time. Still love it just as much as I ever did. Throne of Glass is my favorite of her series. I also really like Alex E. Harrow, who wrote Once and Future Witches and The 10,000 Doors of January. Also love those books. I love Kristen Hanna, Heather Morris, and Kristen Harmel. Those are probably my favorite. Oh, and Marie Benedict. Those are my favorite historical fiction at this point in time authors. I will read anything they write, and a lot of my favorite books are written by one of those women. I also love Madeline Miller. I love Song of Achilles and Circe. Circe is one of my favorite books of all time. I will pick up anything Madeline Miller writes in the future. I am a sucker for witches and dragons, so any story that has witches or dragons in it, I'm probably going to go for it. Same with like a time travel or time manipulation trope. Love it. Eat it up. Some of my other favorite books are The Alchemist by Paulo Coelho. The Things We Cannot Say by Kelly Rimmer. Oh, she's also an auto-buy author for me. I will read anything she writes in the historical fiction genre. I already mentioned Once and Future Witches, one of my all-time favorites. Circe, Three Sisters, written by Heather Morris, one of my all-time favorite books, but I really love every book she's written. And then I recently read the Prison Healer series by Lynette Noni, and I loved it. That's definitely one of my favorite fantasies right now. I love the Beartown trilogy by Frederick Backman, but again, I'll read anything he writes. And I cannot pick between The Kite Runner and A Thousand Splendid Suns. They are both phenomenal. So those are some of my favorite books. Why do I read? I also freaking love to travel. Traveling is my other passion, travel and books. And I always say that if you can't travel somewhere, the next best thing is to read a book. You can live so many lives and visit so many places by reading books. When I'm not traveling, I'm reading. And even when I'm traveling, I'm reading. But I do like to read books that are kind of themed with wherever my travel is. So last summer, I traveled to Greece. I read a whole bunch of Greek mythology retellings, and I ate it up. I loved it. I am fascinated by the human condition. That's why I love a character-driven book that has a really good character arc. I love morally gray characters. I love any book that shows how human people are, the flaws that we have, but also like our redeeming characteristics and how great humans can be, like how good humanity can be. Humanity can also be really awful, and we see that in books, but I love seeing how amazing they can be too. I tend to go for character-driven stories, even in fantasy. If the fantasy has an amazing plot, but there's not a good character arc, it's not going to be one of my favorites. Like I'll read it. It might be a good time. It might just be for escapism, but I have to have a character arc. I have to see character development. I have to feel like I can connect with the characters, like I get them on a human level, and they have to be flawed and they have to feel like real people to me. I also love to learn. So I do read a lot of nonfiction, probably compared to most fiction readers. I kind of just have to be in the mood for it, but when I'm in the mood, I can gobble up a bunch of nonfiction. I love to learn new things. I love new experiences. That's another part of my ADHD, just like shiny new object. I love learning about new topics. It's really stimulating and exciting to me. I will go down a rabbit hole. I call it my black hole. I'll go into my black hole, my hyperfixation about a topic. I will read all the books on the topic until I feel like I have exhausted the subject, and then I'll move on to something else. I call them my mini obsessions, or my black holes that I go in. So that's definitely a neurodivergent trait of mine. What will be the biggest challenges about your channel? Well, I work full time. I'm a single mom. I have 5 young children. I'm a very busy woman. So finding time to film where I have light and quiet. Currently, my children are on a vacation with their dad, which is the only reason I'm able to film this video. So finding the time to film and edit might be challenging for me, but I am up for the challenge, And, you know, if I have subscribers out there and I have people, like, it's going to be really motivating for me. So I'm really looking forward to it. When did I start reading? I have been reading my entire life. I'm an oldest child. I've always been obsessed with language and letters and reading and talking. My mom said I talked at a really young age. I knew my alphabet before I was 1 year old. I learned to read at a really early age. I've always been a big reader. My mom used to read books to me before bedtime, and I have vivid memories of like reading like Dr. Seuss books and like Frog and Toad, some of these like childhood books of mine that I loved. And so I've been reading as long as I can remember. Once I got into elementary school, when I was probably in late elementary school, my grandmother introduced me to The Secret Garden. It's one of her favorite stories. I just fell in love with it with her. I kind of remember after reading The Secret Garden, like really getting into more chapter books, and it is not a small book. And so I think that I was really motivated to read that book. And then when I finished it and loved it, I just realized that I could read anything. Okay, so I started having babies and, you know, not having as much time to read. Your arms are always full. You always have kids like climbing on you, needing you. I was reading significantly less, like a fraction of what I would normally read. What happened is when I had my 5th child, I was working as a nurse on the floor. I had a newborn at home, and I would have to go and pump on my shift. That's when I really discovered audiobooks, because I was bored just sitting there. This is back in the day where you had to hold your breast pump, okay? And so my hands were full, so I couldn't like read a book because I couldn't turn the page, but I just had to sit in this sterile, empty, boring room with nothing to do for 20 minutes while I pumped breast milk for my baby. I decided, oh, I should try audiobook. And I remember one of the very first audiobooks I listened to was The Martian by Andy Weir. I loved it so much. And that was a game changer for me, because then I realized I could listen to books while I was driving and commuting to work. I could listen while I drove, that I could listen while I pumped, that I could listen while I cooked dinner. And that sparked a new love for reading for me. And then during the quarantine, I started reading even more. I had lots of time on my hands, and I just started devouring books, and both reading physically and listening to audiobooks. And I haven't stopped since. 4 years later, and I think I've read over 400 books. I might be closer to 500 over the last 4 years. So I just devour the books, but I wouldn't be able to do it without audiobooks. So I am extremely grateful for audiobooks. Where do I read? Well, audiobooks anywhere, everywhere, all the time. When I love a physical book. Okay, you can see I collect books. I love special editions. I love a physical book. I love the smell of books. I love the feel of books. I love reading a book. I just don't have as much time. But when I do have time, my favorite places to read, I love to go to the bookstore. I love coffee shops. I love to just sit on my bed and read. I have a love seat in my front room downstairs that looks out my front window. If it's early morning, I love to have like a hot cup of coffee and sit in my love seat and watch the sunrise, because that window faces east. And so I can watch the sunrise and read my book and drink my coffee. And that is like a lovely weekend morning ritual for me, especially if my children aren't around or are still asleep. I also love to read on the beach. I will always read on the plane when I'm traveling. I do travel as much as possible. And I read in the bath. I love to take bubble baths, and I will read in the bathtub. I don't discriminate. I love books in every form. My library. Well, I'm going to do a bookshelf tour for you all. You can see some of it behind me here. So I have 3 of these 9 cube shelves full of books in my room. And then I have some against my wall stacked and on my wall on shelves over here. And then I have another 3 set, a different kind of bookcase on my stair landing that's also full of books. So at this point, I tried to do a tally before I made this video. It's hard to say exactly, but I roughly own around 400 audiobooks, because I have Book of the Month where I get audiobooks, and I subscribe to Audible, and I've had Audible for like 9 years now, and I take advantage of all of their sales. I have over 1,000 books on my shelf, like on my bookshelves in my home. So definitely qualify for having my own library. And I have about 300 ebooks on my Kindle. So I do collect special editions, which I will share and have shared on my channel already because I've made a lot of short videos. But I will definitely do a bookshelf tour in the future. I do love my special editions, and I do get some of the subscription boxes, but I also take advantage of sales, and I love to shop secondhand. So anytime I can buy a book secondhand, I will. If I can get it at obviously like special editions, you can't do that as easily. Or if you do, sometimes it actually costs even more to get it secondhand. But I shop at charity shops. Anytime I'm getting a book on Amazon, I always check to see if it's available as used first before I buy it new. Yeah, I mean, I go to estate sales. I will always try to get a book secondhand if possible, whichever way is the most economic and sustainable, because I do care about that. But I like to have my physical books because they never change. You can own an ebook and it can be altered even while you own it. It can be remotely altered. It can disappear. It can be deleted. It can be banned. Something can be wrong with the licensing and you can lose it. But once you have a physical book in your hands, once you own it in your home, there will never be changes without your knowledge. And if someone ever takes it, it's stealing. So I really value having a physical copy of books in my home. Plus, I have 5 children that I hope will eventually read some of my books. We also have an extensive like young adult and children's library. You know, I hope as they grow and become adults that they will also read my collection. And anytime there's a book that I think is controversial, that's at risk for being banned or changed or whitewashed or anything like that, I like to have a physical copy. I also enjoy annotating sometimes. So if it's a copy that I want to annotate or a copy that I'll refer back to, like almost every nonfiction book that I enjoy, I have a physical copy of, because I want to be able to go back and see it with my own eyes and reference it. And I underline things, I use tabs, I annotate. And then I do use the Libby app. I use the library a lot. I would actually own probably thousands more books if I didn't have the library. And I utilize it as much as possible, mainly for audiobooks, sometimes for ebooks. But I get a lot of my books through the library, through Libby. So that's a little bit about me. I hope that you found this helpful. I hope you feel like you got to know me a little bit. If you're here, if this sounds like it's up your alley, if we have anything in common, if it resonates with you, if you want a cozy but chaotic YouTube bookish friend, I am it. I will always give you my honest opinions. I like to have good discussions. I like to learn new things. Yeah, I want to connect and grow and be part of this bookish world out here. I just think that the internet is incredible, and the ability we have to connect with people all over the world and to spread love for books and learning and literacy just makes me so happy. And I guess I will share that the reason that my name is The Modern Book Woman, I read The Giver of Stars back in 2020, and I was so inspired, based on a true story about the book women in the 1930s who rode in the mountains in treacherous conditions to teach people who were living remotely in the mountains, who were poor and didn't have access to school and books. They would teach them how to read, and they would bring them library books every week. And they did this without fail, and I just admired them so much, and they were called the Book Women. And I was so inspired by this. I was like, I want to be a modern book woman. I want to spread a love for books, for literacy, for learning. I'm an advocate for everyone having access to library, to books, regardless of where you live and what your socioeconomic status is. And that's something I'm always working on the side. That's a passion I have. So I am the modern bookwoman, but rather than riding around on a horse, I get to do it on the internet and my virtual dragon. So I'm so glad that you guys are here. Let me know in the comment section what other videos you would like to see from me. If you would like to see reviews, hauls, special editions, bookshelf tour, monthly wrap-ups, vlogs. Tell me what you want to see down below. Say hi, don't be shy, and remember to like and subscribe if this is your vibe. I am so happy to have you here, and I want to keep you around, and it would help my channel out so much. So thank you, and I'll talk to you next time. Bye!